Discover 5 surprising daily habits that can add 20 to 30 incredible years to your life, senior women. Sarah Thompson stood in her quiet kitchen, staring out the window at the garden that had once thrived under her care. The flowers, vibrant jewels of her past, were now a tangled mess of weeds, mirroring the chaos that now engulfed her life. She had spent over 3 decades nurturing the eager minds of children, shaping futures, but now, with her husband gone and her mother's health frail, the silence in her home pressed down on her like a heavy blanket. Loneliness seeped into the corners, and every tick of the clock reminded her of his absence. As she tidied up, a forgotten canvas and a box of paint caught her eye. They seemed to echo her dormant dreams, whispering promises of colors and creativity. Using the brush felt invigorating, yet strange. Each stroke unleashed a visual symphony, but vulnerability coursed through her at the twinges of guilt. Moments for herself seemed selfish against the backdrop of her mother's needs. What right did she have to escape into that realm when family demanded her unwavering attention? Crisp lines of joy battled against smudges of obligation in her mind. "Mom, I just don't understand why you want to waste time with all this." Emily's voice was sharp, laced with concern when they spoke about Sarah's newly found passion. "Can't you just focus on helping Grandma? You know healthcare costs are escalating." Each word felt like a dagger twisting in Sarah's heart. Anguish pooled inside her. She wanted to cry out that this was more than frivolity. This was a lifeline tethering her to a time when possibilities felt endless. Yet every time their conversations turned into debates, a knot formed deeper in her chest. How could she explain that her art was not a luxury but a necessity? A way to restart a flickering flame deep within her soul. Caught between her daughter's aspirations for a secure future and the vibrant colors of her past, Sarah's heart raced. Thoughts spiraled. Should she allow Emily's fears to drown her dreams? Each night, as she painted into the small hours, uncertainty gnawed at the edges of her creations. Her mother's laughter once echoed in the house, and she remembered how fiercely they had both supported one another's dreams. Yet the thought of showcasing her artwork in a local gallery ignited waves of anxiety. What if it failed? What if it pulled her further from family obligations? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As her mother's condition grew more precarious, the weight of her responsibilities suffocated her dreams. "Mom, I can't jeopardize the family's well-being," she argued silently, feeling pangs of guilt surge with every drop of paint on her palette. The decisions loomed like storm clouds, dark and looming: dedicate herself to caregiving or grasp at her dreams. Each day the boundary blurred, a fragile thread stretched over an abyss of anxiety and responsibility. But then, in a moment of fragility, her mother's voice, barely more than a whisper but filled with undeniable strength, pierced through that fog. "You must pursue your art, Sarah. Dreams don't come with an expiration date." Those simple yet profound words shattered her internal conflict. An urgent question exploded in her mind. Was it wrong to dream? She stood at a precipice of self-discovery, battling echoes of self-doubt, longing to find her way back to vibrant hues amidst the chaos. Would she honor her mother's legacy by letting go of her own? In that charged silence, with shadows creeping closer, Sarah felt the stakes rise. A defining moment hung in the air, where freedom and obligation wrestled for dominance in her heart. Could she ever find the balance, or would her creative spirit forever be lost in the clutches of expectation? The answer felt like a brushstroke, waiting to be unleashed, yet still so far from her reach. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself deep in the throes of conflict, each passing hour burdened with choice. The canvas remained propped against the wall, a silent yet persistent invitation. She felt a growing restlessness, amplifying with each visit to her mother, a cycle of caring for someone else's spirit while neglecting her own. Refreshing colors danced vividly in her mind, yet her hands froze whenever she ventured towards the easel. The brush, once a symbol of expression, became an artifact of guilt. Every time she reached for it, the familiar weight of obligation pressed upon her, reminding her of what was at stake. Could she be the daughter her mother needed while cultivating this new aspect of herself? Or was she destined to surrender her desires at the altar of familial duty? Emily's voice echoed like a relentless echo in her mind, fueling a dynamic struggle, almost drowning out her mother's quiet encouragement. They had always had a passionate bond, founded on shared aspirations, yet the harsh reality of life had forged an unbridgeable gap. Sarah closed her eyes, the contrasting voices of her daughter and mother tangled in her thoughts. "Mom, I'm torn," she confessed one evening, sitting at the edge of her mother's bed as the twilight poured through the window. The room was tinged with shadows that flickered in concert with her emotions. "I just want to be there for you, but I can't ignore this passion either. It feels so selfish to even think about it." Her mother, frail yet unwavering, grasped Sarah's hand and held it tight. "Darling, it's not selfish, it's essential. Your heart needs to express itself. Our dreams are woven together, remember?" Sarah's heart swelled, but doubt soon overshadowed that flicker of warmth. What if her art failed? What if every stroke painted was a reminder of her inability to fulfill family expectations? The paralyzing thought became a dark specter that wouldn't leave her. That night, after her mother fell asleep, Sarah crept to her canvas. She felt like a thief in the shadows, sneaking time for herself amidst obligations. With shaking hands, she dipped the brush into blue paint, the first daring stroke cutting through the stillness. The anxiety of the decision enveloped her, making each stroke feel monumental, each color a claim laid against her life. As the night stretched on, time slipped away. What began as hesitation morphed into a dance of liberation. She painted fiercely, expression pouring forth like a long-buried artifact unearthed. Each stroke was not merely paint upon a canvas, but a raw conversation between her heart and soul, a reclamation of her identity that had been dulled amid caregiving duty. In that fevered embrace of creativity, a realization blossomed, a truth interwoven between each layer of paint. Letting go of the tension didn't mean choosing one world over another. It meant embracing both. With newfound clarity, Sarah grasped that nurturing her passion could coexist with her responsibilities, perhaps even allowing her to care for her mother more fully. But as the panorama of her dreams began to solidify before her eyes, a chilling thought struck her. If she dared to display her work publicly, what would Emily say? Would her daughter understand, or would the rift only deepen? In the stillness of her artistic triumph lay an impending storm, one that threatened to unravel the delicate threads she had woven between duty and passion. The moment loomed, as fragile as the newly painted colors on her canvas, urging her to make a choice. Would she step into the light of her aspirations, risking confrontation with Emily, or retreat back into shadows, the fear of judgment stifling her voice? The air crackled with anticipation, and with trembling thoughts, she realized the question was no longer one of risk. It was about embracing her truth, her very essence. But the cost of this truth loomed, a specter of uncertainty waiting just beyond her door. The day stretched before Sarah like an empty canvas, challenging her to fill it with choices that would shape her future. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, illuminating the remnants of her night's work, a vibrant splash of blue that glistened with promise. She felt an unfamiliar buoyancy, yet anxiety quivered just beneath the surface of her newfound determination. As she poured her morning coffee, her thoughts turned to Emily. Would her daughter celebrate this reawakening, or dismiss it as yet another distraction? Convincing herself that it was too late to backtrack, she resolved to face this head-on. She wouldn't simply create in secret anymore. She would invite Emily into this world. It was one thing to operate within the confines of her family duties. It was another altogether to step into the light of her passions. With an unwavering heart, Sarah penned a letter to Emily, pouring out her hopes and fears in deliberate strokes of ink. "I want to share my art with you," she wrote, voice trembling on the pages. "I hope you can understand how much this means to me." The letter, though simply composed, echoed the tension between maternal duty and self-expression, blatantly exposing the rift she had fought to ignore. As she sealed the letter, a wave of dread washed over her. What if her words only deepened the misunderstandings they had harbored over the years? But like the vibrant strokes on her canvas, she realized clarity had emerged from chaos. The fear pulsated through her, but so did the excitement of connection. Later that afternoon, bravely defying her anxieties, Sarah scheduled a visit with Emily at her favorite cafe. It was a neutral ground, where they had often shared laughter over steaming cups and delectable pastries. The familiar ambiance sparked pleasant memories, yet contrasted starkly with her trepidation. As she entered the cafe, the scent of freshly brewed coffee enveloped her. She spotted Emily seated at a corner table, scrolling through her phone. Sarah's heart raced. Today would be a test of courage. The anticipation clashed with the fingers of uncertainty that clutched at her mind, but she knew it was time to engage in this much-needed dialogue. "Hey, Mom!" Emily looked up, her smile brightening the tension in the air. "You made it!" But even as she said the words, Sarah noticed a fleeting shadow in her daughter's eyes, one reminiscent of their recent strained interactions. "Emily," Sarah ventured, her voice steady as stone, "I've been working on something, a part of me I want to share." She hesitated, her heart pounding like drum beats marking the passage of her resolve. She handed over the letter, trying to steady the tremor in her hands. "What's this?" Emily asked as she took the envelope, confusion flickering across her features. "Read it, please, it's important." As Emily opened the letter and began to read, Sarah seized the moment to observe her daughter's expression, bracing for any hint of judgment or dismissal. But instead, she saw curiosity spark in Emily's eyes, mingled with something deeper: vulnerability. After what felt like an eternity, Emily set the letter down, her gaze locking onto Sarah's. "Wow, Mom," she began tentatively. "I had no idea you felt this way. Why didn't you tell me before?" The confrontation hung in the air like charged particles. This was the moment where they could begin anew. But just as quickly as it felt liberating, doubt crept back. Was this the start of understanding, or would it only reveal deeper fractures? The feelings surged within Sarah, locked in a war between hope and fear. Just as she was beginning to find her footing, the unexpected weight of Emily's question shifted the ground beneath her. She sensed that their emotional terrain was shifting into uncharted territory. What emerged from this confrontation could alter not only her relationship with her daughter, but also redefine her pursuit of self. Could the act of sharing her passion actually bridge the divide that had formed between them? Or would it only expose the scars they struggled to heal? An unsettling truth began to crystallize. This was a step into the unknown, a leap into a potential revelation. She took a deep breath, the moment poised delicately, ready to unfurl into something transformative. What would they uncover together as they redefined their relationship amid this new vulnerability? Little did they know, this conversation was merely the beginning of a far more intricate journey. Sarah's heart thudded in her chest as she awaited Emily's response. Time elongated in that moment, a surreal distortion of reality where every microsecond felt magnified in emotional weight. The cafe buzzed around them, yet it receded into a muffled backdrop, overshadowed by the raw tension of their shared space. Before Emily could gather her thoughts, Sarah realized she had to seize the opportunity to redirect the conversation. "I want you to understand why this matters to me," she said, her voice betraying the urgency to bridge their fractured past. Making art has always been a part of me that I kept hidden. I thought it meant neglecting my responsibilities, but now I see it's essential to who I am. Emily listened, her brow furrowed in contemplation. But Mom, you've always been there for me. I never thought you felt this way about your art. It feels like I was holding back? Sarah interjected, realizing how deeply her silence had hurt both of them. I didn't want to force my dreams onto you, but I see now that I should have found a way to share them, to show you what makes me whole. I thought you might find it silly or trivial. Raising an eyebrow, Emily leaned closer. Silly? No, I just didn't want to think you were unhappy. The admission filled the air with a fragile hope. So, what are you planning to do with your art? The question unleashed a torrent of possibilities in Sarah's mind. Well, I've been toying with the idea of a gallery show, or maybe joining a local art group to find community. I always imagined it as a sort of dream, but now it feels more tangible. Her fingers twitched at the thought. Why not start small, Emily suggested. Get involved with a local workshop, maybe even teach a class? I know you have a unique perspective on things. The idea ignited something within Sarah. Teaching? It felt astonishingly liberating, an act of sharing rather than hiding. You think I could? Emily nodded, her expression open and supportive. Totally. You've always inspired me with your creativity. This could be a chance for both of us to explore what we care about. As they exchanged ideas, Sarah sensed a new vitality blooming between them. The creative spark ignited Emily's curiosity, and in turn, it stoked Sarah's own resolve. Yet despite this momentary ease, doubt still gnawed at Sarah. Could she truly navigate this uncharted territory as both an artist and a mother? The conversation drifted to weekends spent at art fairs and workshops of local artists who had started just like her, nurturing their creativity while managing life's demands. Each shared story seemed to bolster Sarah's confidence, but still, self-doubt lingered like a shadow. Recognizing the path ahead would be fraught with personal challenges, she decided it was time to genuinely confront her fears. What if I fail? What if painting my dreams leads to something that drives us apart instead of together? The weight of her question hung heavily, laden with the implications of vulnerability. Emily's response surprised her. Mom, everyone fears failure, but you can't let that stop you. If we only do what's safe, we miss out on true fulfillment. You're already on that path by just being honest with me. The warmth in her daughter's voice proved infectious. I can't keep sidestepping my fears. What does that teach you? I wish to model the courage to embrace failures as stepping stones, not roadblocks. Sarah felt the late bestseller on self-empowerment she had skimmed the other day echoing in her mind. This was her moment to live those lessons, not just preach them. With their conversation interwoven with laughter and new aspirations, they made a pact to support each other's growth moving forward. Yet, the unyielding undercurrents of their past hovered in the air, hauntingly vibrant, reminding Sarah of the emotional bonds still mired in misunderstanding. As they finished their cafe drinks, she prayed that sharing her passions would shred the veil between them and reforge a more profound connection. What they had begun felt fragile, yet hopeful. But as she rose to leave, Sarah caught sight of a flyer plastered on the cafe wall announcing an upcoming art workshop series. The momentary spark of enthusiasm flared brightly. Should she take that next step, or was it too soon to dive into a sea of unknowns? Mom, are you okay? Emily's look told Sarah that there was something deeper boiling beneath the surface, but now was not the time for hesitation. I will be, Sarah said, her voice stronger than she felt. But first, I need to confront the part of myself I've left uninvited for so long. It's time I brought my dreams into the light. With a last flicker of determination igniting within her, the question emerged. How would she embrace this new chapter without losing herself along the way? The following morning, Sarah awoke feeling a strange mixture of exhilaration and trepidation. The looming art workshop, now a tangible event marked on her calendar, sent her heart racing. It wasn't just the prospect of creating art again, it was the act of stepping into her truth and embracing all that had once been buried deep within her. She brewed her coffee, savoring the earthy aroma that grounded her in the moment. As the steam curled up toward the ceiling, she gazed out the window, watching the world awaken. A sudden rush of nostalgia engulfed her as she recalled weekends spent painting in the backyard, her easel wobbling beneath a morning sun. Those memories felt like remnants of a life half-lived, now sparking the fire of a new existence. Determined to shake off lingering doubts, she scribbled notes in her planner about the workshop. What could she share? Should she prepare a portfolio, or would that seem too presumptuous? The pendulum of her confidence swung wildly as she weighed her options. After all these years spent in self-doubt, self-criticism had become a familiar companion. She glanced at herself in the mirror, taking in the shadows under her eyes, the toll of sleepless nights filled with anxiety. Would they think she was out of touch? She chastised herself for allowing fear to creep in, knocking on the door of her newfound enthusiasm. This time, she needed to confront it, to disrupt the narrative that had long dictated her limitations. With a sudden decision, Sarah reached for her paintbrushes. She hadn't used them in years, but this was a welcomed challenge. The idea of creating something in pure spontaneity felt liberating. She set up her canvas in the living room, filled the room with colors, and allowed her emotions to flow freely. She was no longer an amateur, she was a woman redefining herself. With each stroke, the layers began to peel away. Self-doubt, regret, and the suffocating narratives established years ago. Instead, what emerged was a vibrant collage that mirrored who she wished to be. Bold, expressive, and unapologetically herself. The colors danced across the canvas, igniting a rhythm that she had long missed in her life. The creation became a balm for her restless thoughts. Yet, as she stood back to admire her work, a sliver of doubt crept in. Was anyone besides her going to care about this? What if, despite all her efforts, the workshop felt like a failure? Thoughts spiraled dangerously, and she halted her brush mid-stroke. The front door creaked open, and Emily entered, her eyes widening in surprise at the chaotic burst of creativity filling the room. "Mom, this is amazing!" she exclaimed, an uncontainable excitement in her voice. "You've really found something special here." Sarah's heart fluttered at the encouragement. In that moment, she realized that perhaps this journey wasn't only for her, but also for Emily. It represented a profound exchange of experiences between mother and daughter, an opportunity to foster understanding rooted in passion. "Do you really mean it?" Sarah asked, searching her daughter's eyes for honesty. "Absolutely. You have so much to share. Just think about how many people might feel inspired by your journey, just like I am," Emily replied, striking a chord deep within Sarah's heart. Yet, the fragility remained. Despite this boost of serenity, Sarah felt a need for preparation. What if others didn't respond as positively? What if something she had nurtured with such care crumbled under scrutiny? The anticipation of the workshop loomed ominously in her mind. In the evening, seated on the couch surrounded by her scattered art supplies, while Emily read nearby, her mind raced with plans. What if I started a blog as a creative outlet? What if I shared my story, my fears, alongside my artwork? It could be a way to connect with others on this journey. She pondered quietly, her heart rushing at the mere thought of vulnerability again. The idea began to crystallize. The possibility of intertwining her story with her art felt electrifying, yet daunting. What if her truth resonated with someone? In sharing herself, could she also create a community of artists and thinkers, people who reflected upon their own dreams? As that thought emerged, a growing conviction began to solidify within her. Determining to embrace every vulnerable fiber of her being, she whispered softly, "It's time to take this step, to dive deeper into the unknown." But just as she felt the stirrings of resolve, the familiar tendrils of doubt returned, lingering like a fleeting ghost. How much further could she push herself before something snapped? With those swirling uncertainties, Sarah was left with a lingering question. In sharing her vulnerabilities, would she find a connection, or would the bridge collapse, leaving her isolated once more? The morning sun poured into Sarah's living room, illuminating her chaotic workspace with a golden hue. As she stared at her canvas, still untouched since last night, a mix of determination and chaos swirled within her. The brush lay silently beside a palette of colors, waiting for her confident hand to guide it. It occurred to her that indecision was a form of stasis. In her quest to pursue artistry, she had become familiar with self-doubt, but today felt different. Today, she could choose to act. She settled into a rhythm of deep contemplation, glaring at that blank canvas as if it held the answers to her most pressing fears. "Enough," she murmured, inhaling deeply. Moving forward meant confronting the terror of being seen, a fear that gripped her tightly. Those tiny moments of excitement she had shared with Emily whispered that vulnerability could be a source of strength. What had she learned? Embracing her truth could spark inspiration, not just in her, but also in those who witnessed it. As if compelled by an invisible force, Sarah dipped her brush into vibrant cerulean blue and launched it onto the canvas. The first stroke felt like a revelation, liberating emotions long buried under layers of doubt. This was not merely an act of painting, it was an assertion of identity. The colors began to weave together, forming shapes that danced joyously, an embodiment of her excitement and trepidation, a colorful paradox. Yet, as the strokes multiplied, uncertainty reared its head again. What if this expression was perceived as juvenile? What if someone dismissed her raw emotions as mere child's play? The feeling of fading confidence pulled at her again, like an insistent tide. Then an image of her blog materialized, the idea of sharing not just her art, but her journey. It was a concept that now excited her even more than painting itself. What if she crafted a deeply personal narrative surrounding her artwork, intertwining her story with visual expressions? As she imagined readers connecting with her, recognizing pieces of their own lives in her words and images, her heart raced again with possibility. The hesitation tightened its grip, but she needed to put those thoughts to the test. Determined, Sarah reached for her laptop, fingers poised over the keyboard. It felt unfathomable to open up about her life, to dip into her past failures and insecurities. But that was the point. If she was going to share her art, she would bare her soul alongside it. She began to draft her introductory blog post, laying the foundation for an artistic journey defined by authenticity. Just as she began typing, Emily peeked over her shoulder, inquisitive. "What are you working on, Mom?" "I think I'm starting a blog," Sarah replied, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. "I want to share my art and everything that goes into it." Emily's eyes gleamed. "That's awesome! You'll inspire so many people, maybe even me." The realization struck. This journey could impact not just herself, but the ones she loved. Yet that spark of connection also birthed another nagging thought. Sarah's heart pounded harder as she contemplated rejection. What if her words fell flat, ignored in the vast expanse of the internet? The weight of impending critique sat heavy upon her chest. She took a moment to breathe, considering the stakes. The fear of failure felt paralyzing. Each moment spent on this blog could lead to both withering criticism or liberating acceptance. But maybe that was her lesson. Growth often blossomed in the face of fear. She wasn't merely risking her art, but rather her entire sense of self. What if she chose to push through the trepidation, to transform those dark thoughts into fuel for creation? Sarah leaned back, feeling the weight of the decision before her. She could either play it safe, remaining nestled in comfort, or dive into the abyss of vulnerability and emerge transformed. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, she decided. "I'm not just an artist, I'm a storyteller," she said softly, rekindling her resolve. The brush, the canvas, the blank space, everything was a call to action. Would she seize the moment? She knew, deep down, that the real confrontations were just beginning. The quest to share herself would bring the truth to light, but what awaited on the other side? With all her thoughts racing, she filled her screen with words that expressed not just art, but embodied her journey untold. And with every string of letters, Sarah realized that the workshop was no longer the culmination of her anxieties, but merely the next chapter in her evolving narrative. This time, she would meet the fear head-on. But could she provide herself with the affirmation she so desperately sought? As she pressed save for the first time, she eyed the canvas anew. The potential reflected back at her was almost palpable. What would she create next? Sarah stared at the glowing screen, the first lines of her blog post now etched in virtual permanence. It was only a few moments of typing, yet those words resonated deep within her, reverberating through the layers of self-doubt she had battled for years. Each letter was like a stroke of paint, marking a point in her journey she had long contemplated but was hesitant to share. But with each passing moment, she felt an insistent nudge from the universe urging her forward. The awareness that someone, perhaps even Emily, would read her thoughts ignited an electric thrill. The prospect of offering a glimpse into her world felt dangerously exhilarating, awakening passions she thought were dormant. What if this blog became a window into the mosaic of her experiences? It was not just about the brush and canvas anymore. Every post could be an invitation for others to join her, to understand as she unveiled the narrative of her artistic expedition. Riding the wave of inspiration, she penned entries about her struggles with self-criticism, her devotion to creativity, and the fear of exposure. Each tale she wove felt alive, an extension of herself reaching outwards. But with excitement came a gnawing fear. Was she brave enough to tell the truth? What if the world found her mundane? The thought gripped her stomach in a vice. Yet as she leaned back in her chair, she recalled a moment she shared with Emily a few weeks prior. They had been at the park, surrounded by blooming flowers and laughter, when Emily asked her about what being an artist meant. Sarah's answer had been honest, a moment without pretense. "It's about capturing emotions, honey. It's about revealing parts of myself." That truth ignited something within Sarah, a realization that authenticity was her greatest asset. If she could convey such depth to her daughter, surely she could extend it to strangers scrolling through her content. She resolved to transform her fears into themes, exploring deeply personal topics that explored resilience in the face of self-doubt, the beauty of vulnerability, and the exploration of healing through creativity. With rekindled determination, Sarah turned toward her canvas once more. Her fingers itched to pick up the brush and imbue the blank surface with layered expression. Painting wasn't an escape. It was the dialogue between her heart and the world. Matching the spirit of her initial words, she felt a fresh burst of courage. Each color echoed the stories of her life, the despair, the joy, the chaos, and now she was ready to portray that complexity. As she dipped her brush into a mix of vivid hues, the canvas began transforming into a swirling labyrinth of shapes and feelings. In her mind, the concepts for her blog posts melded with the brushstrokes. Each color choice mirrored the emotions she would soon articulate. Here, she found symbiosis between her art and her writing. As the hours melted away, Sarah became consumed in her work. With each stroke, she was reclaiming her story, unfurling the tightly held narratives that had once kept her shackled in the shadows. Yet, amidst the exhilaration, brewed a simmering anxiety of the unknown. What if the world did not comprehend her vibrancy? What if all went unnoticed or misunderstood? Taking a deep breath, Sarah paused, allowing herself to reflect on the power of that question. The true beast before her was not the fear of criticism, but the looming shadows of her own judgment. She realized it was time to confront that part of herself and to evolve in the process. On an impulse, she opened the blog entry again to revise and expand. This time, she highlighted not just pain, but growth, intermixed with the lessons learned in her artistry. She wanted vulnerability to serve as her anchor, fortifying her narrative against the tides of judgment. After several hours, content with her draft, she gazed back at the canvas, now alive with colors that danced in the sunlight streaming through the window. A smile broke across her face. Perhaps it was in the act of creation, in the blending of vulnerability and artistry, that she would discover her own strength. Just then, Emily entered the room, her eyes widening at the transformation of both the wall and the digital canvas. "Wow, Mom, that looks amazing. Are you going to post this on your blog?" Sarah hesitated, still locked within her vortex of emotions. "I think I will," she replied, knowing deep down that the stakes had never felt higher. The moment of decision loomed. Was she truly ready to let the world into her life through her art and writing? As the words hung in the air, she felt the specter of fear tighten around her. Tonight would be unlike any other. She would finally confront the question that lingered. How far could she go if she chose to stand tall in her authenticity? Would she find validation, or would she stumble into the chasms of rejection? The answers beckoned, just beyond the horizon, as her journey of unveiling that which lay hidden seemed to stretch endlessly before her. Sarah sat at her desk, her laptop open, and the recent blog draft glowing before her. The flicker of the cursor felt like a heartbeat, pushing her to take the next step. Each word she'd crafted seemed both liberating and suffocating. The exhilaration of her newfound honesty clashed with the dread of vulnerability. What if her truth displeased someone? What if her hidden flaws, the ones she had worked tirelessly to conceal, became exposed for the world to see? But the notion of sharing her journey pressed upon her, like a bubbling cauldron of inspiration demanding release. She shifted in her chair, her heart beating a rapid rhythm. Each splash of paint on her recent canvas was like another nudge from her soul, urging her forward into the unknown. Perhaps it was time to commit fully, to let the world see the real Sarah, flaws and all. Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself of her daughter's encouraging words. Emily had not only seen the art, she had seen beyond it to the emotions lodged in every stroke. Could Sarah embrace that level of transparency? Could she open herself to possibly finding connection with her readers? With a sudden resolve, she pushed herself away from the desk and approached the canvas. The fragments of her experience stared back at her in a vibrant chaos. The piece ignored conventions, much like her life had, messy yet beautiful in its authenticity. Vibrant reds pulsed with the intensity of her fears, while cool blues swept over remnants of sorrow, each layer telling a different story. As she painted, she thought of themes to dive into: loss, hope, the tension of expectations versus reality. Could she reflect on her journey of being a single mother and an aspiring artist, trapped between the demands of responsibility and the pursuit of passion? The conundrum of being both nurturer and creator weighed heavily on her. These experiences were the raw material for her writing and art. Lost in thought, Sarah stepped back from the canvas. The painting radiated a mixture of emotions, a perfect representation of her internal struggle. Maybe she could mirror that struggle in her blog. Each blog post could distill moments of doubt into lessons of resilience, serve as both confession and catharsis. However, the anxieties that bubbled underneath her excitement began to rise again. It was one thing to paint about vulnerability, quite another to share it. What would it mean if she risked being truly authentic? Enlightenment meant peeling back layers she'd carefully constructed over the years. Would she be ridiculed for her honesty? Would others relate, or would they turn their backs? Emboldened again by her painting, a thought ignited within her. What if sharing her story inspired even one person? Could her struggles resonate with anyone else navigating the labyrinth of self-identity? The art of storytelling had always been a powerful tool. Perhaps now it could be a light, guiding her through her doubts. With a fervent determination, she opened her blog entry one more time. The blinking cursor urged her fingers into motion, and she began typing. I've fought with self-doubt for years, and at my lowest, I still found myself picking up the brush. Today, I want to talk about the beauty in revealing our vulnerabilities, about how embracing our insecurities can be the first step to artistic expression. The words flowed, gathering conviction with each line. She wrote not only for herself, but also for the listeners she hoped to find. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the room in hues of amber, an intense energy surged through her. A newfound clarity emerged. She would post her truth. Sarah could feel the importance of that choice settle within her, almost like a quiet promise made to herself. But a sudden thought pierced this fragile victory. What would she do if the feedback was harsher than she hoped? What if they silenced her voice instead of amplifying it? Determined to stand on her own, she pushed that question aside, ready to face the risk of exposure. Just as she clicked publish, the door creaked open. Emily peeked in, her presence grounding Sarah in the shared moment. "Did you do it?" her daughter asked with bright eyes, filled with curiosity. "Yes," Sarah replied, the weight of that simple word holding potent significance. Yet, beneath her excitement, simmered a lurking anxiety. It was still unclear how this decision would shape her path. The room felt charged with energy, and her heart raced with the pace of uncertainty. Now there was only one thing left, a face-off against the world she had so fearfully imagined. As she stared at the screen, waiting for a response, she was left wrestling with her mixed emotions. Would she finally step into her own narrative, or would this plunge expose her insecurities further? In that moment, she could see the horizon ahead, but would the dawn bring insight or despair? The hum of her laptop felt deafening in the quiet room, as Sarah waited for the world to respond to her vulnerability. Each passing second stretched into an eternity, and with it, her excitement shifted to apprehension. What if this single act of bravery unraveled everything she had worked for? The image of her painting flashed across her mind, a vivid reminder of her messy, chaotic artistry. Nothing in her life had ever fit the mold, so why would this? She stood, pacing the small space, her thoughts racing. The weight of that publish button pressed down on her like a boulder. Each step brought with it a cacophony of dilemmas. Could she manage the potential fallout? What did it mean to share her truth in a world rife with judgment? She had tried so hard to protect herself, to shield her heart from others' harsh perceptions. Yet here she was, wrestling with the very nature of her identity. Just then, her phone buzzed on the desk, breaking her spiraling thoughts. A notification. With a heart pounding like a drum, she reached for it, her fingers hesitant. Scanning the screen, her breath hitched. Comments were flowing in, both positive affirmations and a few critical voices she had dreaded. "Your courage is inspiring," someone wrote. "I can relate to your struggle. Thank you for sharing." But then there was a sharp comment. "You need to toughen up. Artists should be more professional." The emotional whiplash was palpable. For every ounce of support, there was the undercurrent of criticism that threatened to drown out her resolve. Sarah felt a ripple of anger at the naysayers. Could they not see the complexities of being an artist, a mother, a dreamer, all wrapped into one? Momentum surged within her, fueled by that resentment. She could view this as an opportunity, a crucible for growth. Those who criticized her art may not understand it, but it was hers. Their opinions didn't define her journey, and perhaps this was the moment to channel the intensity of her feelings into something fruitful, an opportunity to teach and connect. She grabbed her laptop, resolved to respond, to engage. "Thank you for your feedback," she typed, her fingers flying across the keys as a new conviction built up inside her. Art is subjective, and I've always believed that imperfection is where the beauty lies. I'm sharing my story because I believe in the strength of vulnerability, and I hope it resonates with those who find themselves navigating similar paths. As she hit send, a strange sense of empowerment washed over her. Engaging with those who challenged her meant she was not merely a passive participant, but an active voice in her narrative. This new dynamic pushed her to think critically about her work and her message, solidifying her resolve to create with intention. Her daughter peeked in again, sensing the shift in energy. "You okay, Mom? You were really nervous a moment ago." "I think I just learned that vulnerability isn't just about sharing your struggles, it's also about standing up for your voice," Sarah replied, a smile creeping onto her face, emboldened by the realization. "That's amazing. Is it really that easy to connect with people?" Sarah paused, considering her daughter's question. "It's not easy at all. But maybe that's the point. Connection comes from authenticity, from opening ourselves to criticism while still owning who we are." Inspired, Sarah began jotting ideas for her next blog post. New themes emerged: the concept of resilience born from confrontation, lessons on handling criticism, and the intricacies of self-expression. Each idea felt like stepping closer to her truth, pushing her boundaries even further. As the night stretched on, illuminated by the soft glow of her laptop screen, Sarah caught sight of her painting across the room. A beautiful, flawed masterpiece, just like her. It was a reminder that art wasn't just about perfection, but the journey, the growth, and the courage to share that journey with others. Yet dark clouds crept into her mind again as she wondered, had she opened herself too much too soon? Would this newfound transparency lead to deeper connections or unbearable scrutiny? Questions lingered like shadows. The weight of her decision hung in the air. She felt on the brink of something transformative, yet precarious. Tomorrow promised a new round of interactions, another layer to peel back in her journey. Was she truly ready to embrace whatever might come? As she took a deep breath, ready to make strides into that uncertain territory, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenge was only just beginning. With the dawn of a new day, Sarah woke up with a sense of purpose that burned brightly within her. The previous evening's conversations echoed through her mind, a blend of encouragement and doubt lingering in the quietude of her thoughts. As she stretched and prepared herself for the day, the sunlight flooded her kitchen, illuminating not only her surroundings, but also igniting the fire inside her to embrace change. Today could be pivotal. She could choose to elevate her journey by attending that art workshop. Having registered days earlier, the workshop no longer felt like a mere formality. It was an opportunity to meld her gathered experiences, to transform them into actionable knowledge and skills, and to connect with fellow aspiring artists. This was the manifestation of her resolved commitment to reclaiming her identity as an artist and a creator. As she sipped her morning coffee, the rich aroma grounding her amidst fresh possibilities, Sarah reflected on the conversations she had shared with Emily. The warmth she felt from her daughter's words bolstered her confidence. Her earlier vulnerability was opening doors, creating space for honest dialogues about their individual passions and aspirations. But it wasn't just about communication. It was about mutual growth, a chance for both mother and daughter to step forward on their paths. With keen determination, she donned her favorite blazer, a vibrant blue that perfectly matched the strokes of color on her latest canvas. It was symbolic, a bold statement of who she was becoming. Today, she wouldn't just blend in, she would shine. The familiar swirl of insecurity attempted to lash through her mind as reminders of self-doubt echoed, but this time she planted her feet firmly against them. As she stepped into the studio, the scent of linseed oil mingled with the aroma of coffee, creating an air of creativity that stirred excitement within her. She was greeted by a multitude of canvases, some half-finished, others bursting with color. Each participant held a unique narrative, and the room thrummed with shared anticipation. Sarah felt her heart race, not from fear, but from exhilaration. Throughout the workshop, Guided by the instructor's passionate insights, she found herself painting with abandon, the strokes flowing wildly as she channeled her emotions into her art. With every brush against the canvas, doubts fell away like leaves in autumn. She immersed herself in the rhythms of creativity, conversing with fellow participants, exchanging stories, and sharing the layers within her journey. "Your colors have such depth," one attendee commented, admiration shining through their voice. "You really know how to express emotions." In that moment, Sarah felt validated. Her struggles, her journey, and every brushstroke echoed resilience. By the end of the session, Sarah presented her piece, a vibrant explosion of colors capturing the essence of both her fears and hopes. Gaze fixated on the canvas, she could see how it reflected all she had navigated: the chaos of obligation, the joy of creativity, the fear of rejection, and the newfound embrace of authenticity. The applause from her peers felt like an embrace of acknowledgement, confirming her steps forward were indeed significant. With a newfound perspective, Sarah took a deep breath and let it out, a release that accompanied her transformation. When she stepped outside, the sun bathed her in warmth, reflecting her inner shift. She had walked into that workshop uncertain, but emerged with conviction. She was no longer just an artist struggling to find her voice. She had actively participated in her growth, fortified her passion, and actively engaged with others, creating bonds that promised to foster progress. Later that evening, as she entered her home filled with the familiar sense of dinner, she found Emily in the living room. "How was the workshop?" her daughter inquired, a hint of excitement painting her question. "I embraced it, Em. I opened up, shared my art, and really connected with others. It felt incredible." A light still shone in Sarah's eyes, the thrill of accomplishment reflecting in her voice. Emily smiled, but then paused, her voice shifting. "Mom, I've been thinking, it's okay to take on more for yourself, but what about Grandma? How can we balance all this?" The slight pang of guilt resurfaced, yet Sarah felt stronger now, fortified by her day's experiences. "I realized something important today," she began, addressing the heart of her fears. "Taking care of my own passions doesn't mean neglecting responsibilities. It means better equipping myself to be there for those I love, including Grandma. I can be an artist and still be a devoted daughter." As they shared their thoughts together, both laden with their respective journeys, Sarah recognized the blossoming relationship with Emily. They were embarking on an adventure, balancing individual growth while supporting each other across the hurdles of life. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah continued to paint, explore new mediums, and refine her blog. Each post became an affirmation, a testament to her growth, and something that resonated with others. As likes and encouraging comments rolled in, she felt an unwavering sense of connection with her audience. She was not just a solitary artist, she was part of an ongoing conversation that spanned around her experiences of vulnerability and tenacity. As she stood once more in front of the canvas, each stroke felt intentional and powerful. She transformed her doubts into strength, a vivid testament to her evolution. The chaos of her prior existence grew more distant as the colors danced before her, now representative of a life rich with fulfillment, culminating not just in artistic expression, but personal achievement. Sarah smiled at her reflection in the window, her heart swelling with gratitude. She had harnessed her narrative, crafting a life filled with purpose. She had conquered the depths of loneliness and embraced the vibrant tapestry of being both an artist and a devoted family member. In that very moment, Sarah realized she had not only redefined her identity through art, but forged deeper connections with those she loved. She had proven to herself that it is possible to have both passion and responsibility coexisting beautifully. Taking that leap into vulnerability had forged her identity anew, empowering her to thrive on her terms. And now, with a renewed spirit, she understood that her journey had just begun. With each brushstroke, a new chapter awaited her, woven with colors of dreams fulfilled, aspects of herself rediscovered, and the joyous dissemination of her story. Remember, Success isn't born from suppressing desires, but cultivating them alongside your duties. Embrace your art, and you will find that fulfillment arises from the most unexpected pockets of life. Now, if you've resonated with Sarah's journey, you need to subscribe now to catch future exclusive emotional stories that uplift and inspire. Leave a like today to empower us to reach even more people with these transformative tales, and don't forget to comment your thoughts on Sarah's incredible growth. Share this video immediately with at least 5 friends who need to hear this message of overcoming challenges. You have the power to spread inspiration. Don't wait even one more second.